Today in our 2016 Toyota Camry, we're going to be taking a look at the Curt Class II custom fit trailer hitch receiver, part number C12107. Here's what our hitch looks like fully installed. It's going to sit right below the bumper, and you're going to see the nice round cross tube sitting right below there. Now this is a Class II hitch, so it's going to give you that 1¼ by 1¼ receiver tube opening, and as you can see, it has a nice reinforced collar, giving it that nice clean look. Now this is going to use a standard 1/2" pin and clip, which are included in the kit, which is nice because you're not going to have anything extra to buy. Now our safety chain connections here, it's going to be a plate style and it's going to be welded on the bottom, but as you can see, there's still going to be plenty of room to get most hooks on or off without interfering with anything. Now this hitch features a 350-pound tongue weight, and that's going to be the force pushing down. It also features a 3,500-pound gross trailer weight rating, which is the amount that it could pull. Now I do want to mention you want to double check with your vehicle's owner's manual to make sure your vehicle could handle that amount of weight. Now the manufacturer does recommend when towing any non-trailer loads that you use a stabilization strap, and you can pick one up on our website using part number 18050. Now I'm going to give you a few measurements to help you in deciding and picking out accessories for your new hitch, such as a ball mount, bike rack, or even a cargo carrier. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the outermost edge of the bumper is 2 3/8 inches. From the ground to the inside top edge of the receiver tube opening is 10.5 inches. Now that we've gone over some of the features, let's go ahead and show you how we get it installed. Our first step in our installation is we're going to have to remove these brackets, and we're going to have one on each side of our vehicle right around where the exhaust is. So we're going to have one bolt going through our frame going up right here, as well as 2 bolts coming from the back going towards the front right here and here. Now I'm going to be using a 14mm socket to remove the bolts. Now for the 2 bolts in the very back here, I'm going to be using a ratcheting wrench just because of the limited space. And again, this is also a 14mm. Now that we have this one removed, we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Now we're going to have to lower our exhaust. Now to prevent from damaging everything, I'm going to be putting a strap around it so that even when it does come down, it's only going to go down so far. Right above our muffler, right behind where we took off our bracket here, there's going to be another bolt holding on our exhaust hanger. I'm going to be using a 14mm socket to remove it. And then directly behind our muffler, we're going to have another bracket that has another hanger on it, and these are going to be 2 12mm bolts. I'm going to be using a 12mm socket to remove them. With our exhaust out of the way, we're going to need to remove our heat shield. I'm going to be using a 10mm socket to remove this bolt towards the rear and one farther up front. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to place our hitch into our vehicle, and we're going to temporarily bolt it into place using 1 bolt on each side. Now that we have our hitch supporting itself on our vehicle, we want to come back and look and make sure that it's centered and it's sitting where we want. Make sure we don't need to make any adjustments. With the hitch sitting where we want it to, we're going to come to the forwardmost hole on our hitch, and we're going to mark our location of where we're going to need to drill. We're going to do the same thing on the other side as well. Now with our holes marked, we're going to go ahead and take our hitch back down so we can drill out our holes. Now I'm going to start out with a 1/4 inch drill bit, and I'm going to drill where we marked. Now I'm going to repeat that process on the other hole that I marked. Now that I have a pilot hole drilled, we're going to need to enlarge this hole just big enough so that we can fit this spacer block through. Now I'm going to be using a step drill bit and periodically checking once I have so much of my hole drilled out to see if it goes through. Now that we have our hole big enough to fit our spacer through, we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. With our holes drilled out, we're going to need to take our spacer block and our fish wire. I'm going to take my spacer block in the coiled end. I'm going to slip it over just like that. Then I'm going to take our 1/2-inch carriage bolts. I'm going to thread it on to the coiled end of our fish wire right here, just like that. So we can put our carriage bolt into our hole here. We'll push it up into the frame. Then we're going to take our spacer and make sure that it goes all the way up in there. Then we can pull our carriage bolt back through, leaving the fish wire attached. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now before we get too much further, we're going to need to trim our heat shield so we can put it back up before we put our hitch in place. Now I made a line here, and if you're looking at your heat shield with the curve going down like this, if you find the arrow, there's going to be a little square next to it, and basically we're going to be trimming off from the edge of that square towards the end. All of this is going to be trimmed off, and you can use pretty much anything you have. If you have a pair of aviation snips, a die grinder, or a rotary tool. It's not very thick metal, and I'm just going to be using a pair of aviation snips. So when you're finished trimming, it should look something like this. Now we're going to be reinstalling our heat shield. So I'm just going to take the one bolt for our mounting location, and I'm going to put it in the front forward hole right here. Now we're going to raise our hitch back into place. We're going to feed our fish wire through the hole that the bolts will go through. And we're going to take our bolts and a conical tooth washer, making sure that the teeth are facing the hitch. And we're going to thread one in just hand tight so that it can support itself. Now we're going to put the rest of our hardware on hand tight. Now with all of our hardware in place, we can come back and snug them up. Now for these 10mm bolts, to tighten them up, we're going to be using a 17mm socket. Our 1/2-inch carriage bolts, I'm going to tighten up using a 3/4-inch socket. Here on the passenger side where we have our muffler, we're actually going to be sandwiching the hitch between the frame and the muffler hanger bracket, and we're still going to be using the supplied hardware, but we're going to be going through the hanger bracket like this. Now in order for it to fit properly, we're going to need to bend the tabs here on our hanger bracket so it sits flat against our hitch. Now I'm going to remove my bracket off of my muffler, making it a little bit easier to bend these tabs. So I took my bracket and I have it over here on a vise, and I'm just going to take a hammer and start beating this tab right here until it sits more flat. Now you can either cut that off, hit it with a hammer, however you need to, but this needs to sit flat so we can get the proper torque on our hitch. So you can see that the tab's a little more flat, doesn't stick up as much, and if we line up our holes, it sits nicely flush against our hitch. Then we can take the supplied bolts and our conical tooth washer with the teeth facing up, and we can line up our hardware. I'm going to be using a 17mm socket, and I'm going to torque them down to the specified amount in the instructions. Now I'm going to come back to our 1/2-inch carriage bolts. I'm going to be using a 3/4-inch socket and torque those down to the specified amount in the instructions. With all of our bolts in place and torqued down, we can go ahead and reinstall our exhaust hangers back in place. We can bolt up our last hanger behind our muffler as well. Now the brackets we took off in the beginning, we're not going to be reinstalling these, so we're going to hold on to the hardware and hold on to these for safekeeping. And that'll finish up our look at the Curt Class II custom fit trailer hitch receiver, part number C12107 on our 2016 Toyota Camry.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com.